Hello there, welcome back to Marcelian&Online, and I hope you are sitting down because the add-on apocalypse is going to get hit, and huge changes have already been confirmed by Blizzard, especially Ian Hazzikostas in the latest interview with PC Gamer, things that we've been speculating about for 3 years at the very least, and they're now pretty much confirmed, and you're probably gonna have to say bye-bye to a lot of the add-ons, but it's actually way better than you think, and it is maybe one way that we could get a new version of WoW that's finally fun, easy, simple to play for you and everybody else. So what exactly is going to happen? Are your favorite add-ons safe? And which ones will you have to get used to not using anymore? First of all, just answer the last question. It's not going to happen in the War Within. Although, to also be fair and to kind of point out that we and pretty much maybe all content creators and other news websites have pointed out that this has been happening since at least Dragonflight, when the edit mode has been introduced, completely outdating a bunch of other UI add-ons that were doing something similar. Of course, it came out in a very basic state that was not really replacing a lot of the add-ons that we know and love, but has been gradually being improved to give you different customizations when it comes to your action bars, your quest add-ons, all of that stuff, and it's getting improved more and more, and more people are starting to use it outside of stuff like, I don't even know, Bartender or whatever they were using at the time. Or maybe you are using still that add-on, and let us know in the comment section down below to tell us exactly what's going on. And hey, if you like this style of video that's more freestyle and unscripted, because this is not scripted and I'm so afraid of stuttering right now, then consider checking our Patreon, and the link is down in the description. You're going to be supporting our channel. You're going to get access to some really cool goodies, especially our player profile. This is exactly why this should have been scripted, but bloopers as well, that you will see me do this way more often than you think, and the player profile that I mentioned that is probably going to get the boot whenever this add-on apocalypse is going to get hit. So let's actually look exactly what add-ons will leave, and probably the best and most anticipated one will be WeakAuras, or essentially combat auras. Those will be completely deleted, and what this means essentially, because of course, big disclaimer to everybody, when all of this is going to happen, we're not going to just rip off the band-aid right away and then just have the game that it is now, but without add-ons. That's not going to happen. This implies that most of the things in game will be changed, and these changes have already started. So let's take this one at a time. Combat auras will be gone, which means, first of all, the classes will be simpler, and we have seen this with some of the reworks like Red Paladin, which is now the most popular spec in the game, arguably the easiest spec and simplest spec in the game. Maybe not easiest, but it is the simplest spec in a game to play, that requires maybe almost no add-ons to actually fully function at the peak of its performance. Most likely, more specs will follow. We're not going to have all of the specs be as simple as Red, definitely. Right, Blizzard? Right? Come on, man. But we're gonna have less intricate classes that will need 12 pages of documentations and theories and PhDs to understand how their rotations function, which will of course make the game less stressful to play. You won't have to go to different websites to gather all that information, and you can just log in and play, and that's the main thing. The other thing will be that we'll just have fewer, easier procs that we need to track. So you won't have your top right part of the screen just filled with rows upon rows upon rows upon rows of buffs, where 90% of them just don't really matter because you're never going to look at them, see them, and use that information for any decisions while you are in combat. CC, like stuns, will also show more clearly when they hit DR, or diminishing returns, because we know that if we have like 4 stuns, the 4th one that launches will just not do anything because the mobs will be immune. Stuff like that will be easier to see, and you will not need add-ons to tell you when that's safe to keep a crowd controlling. Debuffs that you're going to be tracking, for instance like tank debuffs in raids, specifically addressed by Ian, will be more clear to see when you have to tank swap, and you won't need stuff like, I don't know, DBM or BigWigs to tell you taunt now, taunt now, taunt now. It will be more obvious. Now, of course, this will be the end result. We don't know how this will actually be implemented, but at least it's going to be fun to see. As I mentioned, much to our chagrin, Nameplates will be gone in the sense that a lot of the functionalities of plater style add-ons, where the nameplates change their color, their positioning, whatever they do based off of what happens in combat, will not exist in the game anymore. But you will be able to customize your nameplate, like the size and aspect and visual aspect, which, I mean, in my mind, that sounds like skins for nameplate, which that could be a cool thing to add. But that will mean that the mechanics that the mobs cast, or the types of the mobs that you normally use different color nameplates for, will be less important to track, or fewer of them exist in general, making encounters, mostly in Mythic Plus, because that's usually where this matters a little bit more, will make encounters easier to address, and you won't have to juggle 17 style of interrupts, crowd controls, CCs, and mobs to tap target, to do all of this. Like that will most likely gone, making the game less, let's say, stressful to approach, because the challenge will still be there, and we'll talk about that in a second. Tracking your party's cooldowns will also be gone, and maybe you're not doing this already, but if you're not, here's what that means and why you'll still be happy to hear that this will happen. When you're playing in a party, especially in Mythic Plus once again, but also in raids, you normally track your party's interrupts so that you know when interrupts are available for specific casts to go off so that you don't wipe. Now, if we're not going to be able to track that anymore, means we're going to have fewer spells that we need to interrupt, meaning bonsai for warlocks, casters, priests that have some of the shittiest interrupts in the game possible. So yeah, you can play those. You will not be kicked out of a party because you don't have a good interrupt anymore. That sounds pretty freaking incredible, don't you think? And of course, if we're not going to be able to track defensives so that you know, oh my god, can I pull this next pack? Let me see if my party has defensives to survive it. If we're not going to track those anymore, that means packs in general will be less deadly, meaning that you won't just die out of the blue because, oh my god, I didn't realize I needed to press a defensive there. That will be addressed as well. So yay once again. And of course, DPS cooldowns. If we're not going to be able to track those, that means that pools in dungeons will be also less complex and punishing, where we can just play the game and not, you know, micromanage everything. Although that is a little bit fun, and that's probably not going to go away in its entirety. You'll probably still be able to kind of communicate with people either through voice comms or through party chat. Okay, we want to pull this big thing. But at least it won't be as necessary, meaning, I don't know, maybe dungeon timers will be more relaxed. Maybe packs will be easier designed with fewer mobs that are like super important to kill really quick, and everybody needs cooldowns for those. So once again, less punishing combat. Now that most of these will be addressed and altered and most likely gone, what will remain? Well, damage meters will be part of the basic UI, which is something that has to remain because this is a measure of performance. And to address this as well, Ian did mention that logs will probably be looked at in the hope of being removed. So this is something that I'm not 100% sure how this will work, because logs are a measure of performance, and WoW will still be, or at least endgame WoW will still be, a performance-based combat. And I don't think that can go away, because that will kill WoW for a lot of people. I understand not everybody engages with that style of gameplay, but a lot of people do, and that's still pretty fun, and that is how endgame should be. So we'll see how that actually develops, but damage meters are very important because you actually don't really know if what you're doing is good enough to complete this content. And speaking of performance-based combat, they have addressed the rotational helper, whether it's the one button rotation or the general highlights on your action bars. That is still underdeveloped, and they're still thinking if they should allow a functionality of the rotational helper to be addressed where players can import a string, a code that will alter their rotational helper to be more in line with their current theory crafted class, to make sure that their rotation is as up to date as possible with how that spec is supposed to be played, so it's not outdated or wrong if, let's say, a new class buff happens and you need to press different types of spells. I think this is actually a bad idea if they implement it, because this goes against what they're actually trying to do, especially with the rotational helper, because this will make people still go to external sources and theory crafts and find the most up-to-date string and import it into the game and interact with the game in a less gamer way, but more in a coding programmer way, where you alter your things by, you know, importing certain types of codes. But of course, we have that for Talon loadouts, so maybe I'm wrong. We'll see how this evolves. And timers for encounters will also be part of the baseline rotation, which means overall that you don't need deadly boss mods or big wigs, do raids, and that means that either you'll have timers, but also mechanics will be a little less punishing. We will have fewer swirlies to move out of for casters because they want us to be able to not have to use WeakAuras and timers and figure out exactly, okay, when do we have to move, meaning that they will give us more time to move out of swirlies and fewer swirlies overall, because once you have, as Ian mentioned, all of these add-ons that tell you exactly when things happen and how exactly to deal with those, the only way to keep challenging players is to make them super punishing and need a fast reaction time to be able to be dodged. And if we're taking all of those away, that means we're reverting all of this, so we're gonna have fewer of them and more time to react to them, making raids and dungeons more playable for more people, lowering the difficulty of overall encounters across the board. Now, all of these will come gradually as the time progresses, and we have seen this with the edit mode over the years, like I mentioned before, where they keep adding more and more stuff to it, and they've addressed the cooldown manager, which we've made a video on a couple of weeks, months ago, whenever it was testable, that it's incomplete and it's not really doing what WeakAuras are supposed to be doing, but maybe it's not supposed to do that because we don't have to have that much complexity within a class, so you need all of those WeakAuras and options for the cooldown manager to function. But if there's something that you would need a WeakAura for, they will likely look at Cooldown Manager to solve that problem for you in a less invasive way. And what this all means for WoW is, first and probably most obvious thing, is that we're kind of preparing WoW for consoles. If we need fewer external add-ons, which are probably likely impossible to get on consoles, that means we can actually port World of Warcraft to Xboxes and PlayStations and maybe Nintendo Switches, who knows? And we can play it on the couch in our living room. That's a different kind of dream that I kindly want to see be enacted too. But also, more importantly, and this is interesting, mobileification of WoW is a term that Marcelian uses because, as we know right now, Final Fantasy XIV is preparing itself to be launched on mobile platforms. So it's not necessarily unheard of that WoW might follow suit. Of course, this will probably happen at least after the World Soul Saga, so you don't have to worry right away. This will be, once again, a gradual process, so it's all going to happen without maybe even you realizing it, because if you think that this will just happen tomorrow, and tomorrow you're not going to be able to play the game because you don't have any of the add-ons, you probably haven't even realized that it's been happening for years, ever since at the very least of the beginning of Dragonflight, with the edit mode, with the private auras that they seen that were terrible and they're not going to do again, as confirmed by Ian as well. But which add-ons do you wish to retain in the game, and which add-ons would you be super happy to let go of? Let us know in the comment section down below. And of course, check this video out on the upcoming buffs that are probably live as you watch this video. And if your spec is going to crush it in this week of World of Warcraft.